Welcome to our Friday's broadcast of the Gospel Truth. Today I'm continuing to talk on a new series that I've entitled Don't Limit God. I have a brand new book out on this, and the subtitle is Imagine Yourself Successful. And this week I have basically just tried to encourage people that God has more for you than what you've realized. You know, I had a man come to me one time, and he asked for prayer. And he said, I've got a pain in my neck that is just killing me. But before I could pray for his neck, he says, I've also got pain down my spine. I've got a sciatic problem. I've got neuropathy in my feet. He had all of these things, and he just listed like 6 or 7 things. And I was listening to him, and he says, but the pain in my neck is what the problem is. If God could just heal the pain in my neck, I can live with the rest of it. And when he said that, I just looked at him and I said, well, I understand what you're saying. I said, you know, if we were to ask God to heal your neck, your back, your nerve, your feet, all of these other things, I said that the lights in heaven might dim. I'm not sure God's got that much power. And when I said it like that, this guy just looked at me and he said, you know, what I said was really stupid, wasn't it? I said, it sure was. I said, it's not like you're going to tap God out if you get healed of everything all at once. But see, there's a lot of people that just honestly think that somehow or another it's so hard to get God to do something. If I could just get this one little thing done. They aren't looking to maximize things, to get the fullness of everything. They're thinking, how little do I have to survive? You need to think bigger. And this week I've been trying to challenge you that God has big plans for every one of us. This is what the Lord spoke to me January the 31st, 2002, when He told me from Psalm 78:41 that I was limiting Him by my small thinking. And so this week I've been talking about what led up to that. I've given some stats about how that it has just transformed our ministry. Probably 15, our ministry has increased in every significant measure by 15 times. As big, as many calls, as much money, as much outreach, touching people's lives, students. It's gone up at least 15 times in every area over the last 12 years. And it's because I began to change the way I think. Proverbs 23:7 says, as he thinks in his heart, so is he. Your life is going the way of your thoughts. If you want to see the physical circumstances change the way you think. That's huge right there. That is not the approach that most people take. Most people pray and they just petition God, they beg God, they get the prayer team praying, they ask everybody else for their prayers, they draw on everybody's sympathy and pity and do all of these things, and they do everything except change the way you think. If you want to see change on the outside, change on the inside. Change the way you think. Change the way you see yourself. And again, most people think, well, the way I see myself and the way I think is a result of the way things are. No, it's the opposite. It's the opposite. As a man thinks in his heart, that's the way that his life is. And I know some of you don't like that. And you say, I did not think this way. Yes, you did. You may not have thought, I want to be sick, but you thought you were only human. You thought you were limited. You weren't thinking about yourself, that you have the same power that raised Christ from the dead living on the inside of you. Therefore, when some physical problem comes up, you approach it from only a human standpoint. You go and do only what the doctors can do, only what medicine can do, and you can't go beyond that. And so ultimately, it is your thinking that has put you in that situation. There are people that think cancer is incurable. It's not incurable with God. Cancer is not any harder for God than a cold. But if you think cancer is incurable, if you think it's big, if you think all of the lights in heaven are going to dim for you to be able to get healed of cancer, well, then that thinking has allowed that cancer there. You may not have thought, I want to have cancer, but you have thought in ways that made you inferior to cancer. You didn't realize your full potential. I tell you, that is powerful. So anyway, this is what I've been talking about this week. I want to go now to talking specifically about things that I was doing that limited God. my small thinking, things that hindered me. And, you know, a lot of this is going to be personal. I don't want to be talking about myself. I really want to help you take the limits off of God. But one of the best ways I can think of to do this is to share with you personally what God spoke to me and what some of my hang-ups were. So one of my big hang-ups, this is the way that I would express it over here in Mark chapter 4 and in verse 18. It's talking about the parable of the sower sowing the seed, and it's telling about how Satan came and hindered that seed or limited that seed from producing and growing and producing its fruit. And the third type of person, it says, these are they which are sown among thorns, such as hear the word, and the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches and the lust of other things entering in choke the word, and it becometh unfruitful. So this passage is showing how that Satan can limit the harvest, the fruit that God's Word is supposed to produce in your life by just the cares of this life, the deceitfulness of riches, and the lust of other things. Now, I could teach on this and make many applications, but in context here about don't limit God, you know, one of the things that I was doing that limited God was that for the first time in my life and ministry, Jamie and I were succeeding. We were living at a level where things were working, and I just was enjoying not having pressure on me. You know, earlier in this week I gave some details, but for decades I was ministering. I pastored 3 churches. I went on the radio in 1976, have been broadcasting on the radio ever since, and we saw good things happen. I traveled, but it was a strain, and the Lord told me on July the 26th of 1999 that when I started on television in January of 2000 that I was just starting my ministry. Now, I talked about that earlier, but one of the things that did, it showed me why we had struggled, because I really wasn't in my sweet place. I wasn't in the spot that God really had ordained me for. You know, I didn't go through Bible school. I started a Bible school, but I didn't go through Bible school. I went through the school of hard knocks. And it took me 32 years since the Lord called me, pastoring churches, traveling and doing things, before I got to a place where God could really use me. And so when we started on television in January of 2000, all of a sudden everything began to work better. We got ahead financially. We have never been behind financially since January of 2000. So I was enjoying the relative ease. We have had people respond. We were touching people, and there were just all of these good things happening. And you know, one of the reasons that I was limiting God was because I was just coasting. It seems like we had struggled for so long, and we were experiencing relative success, relative ease, that I was just enjoying it. It was lazy. I was just coasting, and I was enjoying not having, you know, disaster stare me in the face. And I had gotten to where I was at ease, and I was just enjoying it. And I'm telling you, there's people watching this program right now that you may be in a position where you have, you know, stretched yourself, you've believed God, you've done things, and now you are reaping enough fruit of your labor and of your effort that you're just coasting. It's easy on you. And even though in a way that's good, in another way it's bad. Because you know what? You can get to where you just start resting, and you know, you let the cares of this life and the riches of the deceitfulness of riches and the lust of other things, you get just to where you're just enjoying life and things are good, and you aren't stretching and reaching for anything. There's a balance here. I believe that we should enjoy the journey. We should be having a good time along the way, but at the same time, there ought to be a holy dissatisfaction. There needs to be a hunger on the inside of you that will never be satisfied until you go to be with the Lord. We need to recognize that there is always more, that God can do more for us and through us, and other people's lives can be touched. And I had just reached a place to where there was relative ease, relative success. And you know what? Here's the way I would say it. Some people, you don't speak to yourself as bluntly as this, but I just got lazy. I had worked hard for so long, and here we were just seeing things work, and I was lazy, and I was enjoying being lazy, and I did not want to get out and start stretching myself. And yet, in my heart, if you would have asked me, you know, do you believe that you're accomplishing all that God wants you to accomplish? I knew that there was more. Again, I'm not trying to say these things for my benefit. I'm trying to illustrate where I was, and I believe that you'll be able to relate to it. But God put a desire in my heart back in 1968 and showed me that someday I would travel the world, I would reach people all over the world, that I would have a worldwide ministry that would be as large, as big as anybody's. I've known that since 1968, but it didn't start happening in 1968. As a matter of fact, I struggled. I pastored 3 little churches that the largest one of those was 100 people. And I just struggled, and we went along from 1968 until 2000. That's 32 years. And for 32 years, my vision was still the same, but it was way off in the future, and I just had to pay attention to where I was and be faithful where I was. And so because of that, I had kind of let this vision lapse, or I wasn't speaking it, I wasn't actively pursuing it, I was just thinking it's off in the future. And when we started on television, we began to start seeing things increase to a degree that we weren't facing disaster, and I was enjoying the relative ease, and I had just gotten lazy. Did you know that when if you receive the things that I'm talking about how all of us limit God, and if you get motivated to start believing God for more and stretching yourself, did you know it's not as comfortable as just sitting there and being lazy, sitting on your couch, doing nothing? It's not as comfortable to get out and work, but it's actually healthier for you. Plus, you'll get things accomplished. Plus, you'll be able to bless other people. I'm telling you, life isn't about just ease and comfort. Even Adam and Eve, when they were created, God put them in the garden and gave them a job to do in perfection. When there was no weeds, when there was no thorns, when there was nothing bad, they still had to dress and take care of the garden. God gave them a job to do. I believe that there is something inside of man that every one of us needs a goal, a task, something to accomplish. I've just been watching a series on television. I won't tell you the name of it or go into detail about it. It's not important. But it's about these famous people, and it was about them that once they retired from this position that was influencing people all over the world, boy, their health went to pot. I mean, things just deteriorated because they didn't have a goal. They were, in a sense, just put out for pasture. And I have not only seen this in this series that I was watching on television, but I've seen it in the lives of people. My mother, she retired, I think, when she was 65 or 67, and she was a beautiful woman, super healthy. I mean, people thought she was in her 40s when she was in her 60s. But did you know that when she retired, in the next 2 years, she aged 20 years? And it was because she was going to these flower things and doing all of these little knitting circles and doing this stuff, but she didn't have a goal anymore once she retired. So she came to work for me and again found a purpose. And my mother lived to be 96 and was totally healthy and doing great until she was at least 94. And a lot of it happened. Her health went down, her looks went down, everything began to deteriorate when she was just put out to pasture and her life was over and she was waiting for the end of her life. You need a goal. You need a purpose. And so I admit that there are times that it's just fun to sit there and coast and do nothing and you got your needs supplied. So let the rest of the world just, suffer. You are taken care of. You don't need anything. But I tell you, this world needs you. This world needs you to believe for something bigger. It really does. I believe that every one of you watching this program, you have God. If you are born again, God lives on the inside of you. And there are gifts and talents and ability on the inside of you that other people need. You are somebody's miracle. You are carrying somebody's miracle. And if you don't stretch yourself and reach beyond yourself and get out of your comfort zone and start taking risk and doing things, there are going to be other people that miss the miracle that God has planned for them because you didn't let Him flow through you. I really believe that. I don't believe that anybody is an island unto themselves. I don't think it's all about get all you can all you get, and then you just sit on your can and you enjoy yourself. That's kind of the American dream, but I don't believe that that's God's dream for anybody. It doesn't matter where you are in life. If you are successful, if you are to a place to where everything is working and you could just coast the rest of your time, you need to have a purpose for your life. You need to get beyond yourself. And I can guarantee you God has a plan that will keep you occupied until your last breath. I believe He has something bigger for every one of us than what any of us will ever accomplish. We will spend our entire life pursuing it. I don't think we ever arrive. We just leave and we head in that direction. But I do believe that you can stop along the way and just quit growing and quit pushing yourself and quit seeking God and trying to reach your full potential. And I'm telling you, this is one of the things that happened to me. After 32 years, actually by the time 2002 came around, it was 34 years of me just pushing and believing and trying to do things. For the 2 years, we had been so successful. Things were working. People's lives were being changed. Income was coming in. We weren't behind anymore. And I just got lazy. And I was enjoying coasting. And you know what? That limits God. God told me that that was limiting Him by me just being lazy. I wasn't thinking about what God wanted. I wasn't responsive to other people who needed to hear this gospel, this good news gospel about the grace of God. And I was just doing what was easy on me. You know what? That limited God. And I didn't realize it. I honestly wasn't aware of it. If you would have asked me, I would have told you, oh no, we're growing, we're doing things. And we were doing things, but we were doing much less than what God had put in my heart. And you know what? I was just coasting. It was during this same period of time that I began to start thinking about my ultimate goal of totally covering and saturating the U.S. and even going around the world with television and with radio. And I began to sit down and think about where I was along this journey. And you know, it was right at the end of 2001. I began to look at this and I figured that at the rate we were growing and adding stations and reaching out, that I would have been over 200, I don't know, I forget the exact details, but I know that I personally would have been over 100 and something years old when I obtained my goals that God had put in my heart. And I just came to realize that, you know, I'm not growing at a rate that I can achieve these goals. I'm behind. I'm lagging behind. I'm going to have to speed up. I'm going to have to reach out. I'm going to have to go further. You know, I would encourage you to do this. What are the goals that you have in your life? There are many of you that don't even have any goals. That's what I spent all of the previous 4 days of this week trying to do, is to stir you up and get you motivated to realizing God has more. You need to pursue Him and you need to get a purpose in your life and head in that direction. But for those of you that do have goals and you know what God wants you to do, you need to sit down every once in a while and just pull inventory and find out where you are in this process. You know, it's like if you were driving someplace, if you had a 1,000-mile trip in front of you, every once in a while you think, you know, I've been going for 2 hours now. At the rate I've been traveling, how long is it going to take me to cover this 1,000-mile distance? And you constantly are aware of where you are, how far you have to go, how far you've come from. It affects, you know, when you get gas, when you eat. Are you going to have to spend the night? Can you cover all of this distance in one day? See, we do this in the natural realm, but in the spiritual realm, people just kind of go through life and they don't have a destination. They aren't judging where they are in this process. And I'm telling you that you couldn't do that in the natural. You'd never make it. You have to plan more than that. You have to also plan in the spiritual realm. You need to pull in inventory. Where are you in the process? How long is it going to take you to accomplish the goals at the rate that you've been going? Are you going to live long enough to do that? And if you aren't, this is what I had to come to grips with. At the rate I had been growing, I wasn't going to achieve the goals that God had put in my life in my lifetime at the rate I was going. And it finally dawned on me that, you know what? I need to get with it. I need to get up off the couch. I need to go out and start doing something. I need to quit being lazy. Most of you don't talk to yourself the same way I talk to myself. You might say it that you need to get more committed, you need to increase, you can say it however you want to say it, but the bottom line is you aren't going to get there if you get complacent, if you let the cares of this life choke the Word. If you get to where you're just enjoying so much going to the soccer games and going to this and that, and you're doing all of these things, and you got your bowling league, and there's nothing wrong with any of those things in their place. But I'm saying that when it gets to where your whole goal in life is just enjoying yourself and sitting back and reaping all of the rewards of your labor, you've lost your vision. You're limiting God. I'm telling you, there's always going to be something out there that God has for you that you have not yet accomplished. And God is a big God. He's going to call you to do things beyond yourself. Some of you, the goals that you have for yourself are goals that it doesn't even take God to obtain. If that's the way that you're thinking, I don't believe that you've really seen God's purpose for your life. God is a supernatural, awesome God. And He is going to call you to do something that is beyond yourself, beyond your natural ability. It's going to force you to rely upon Him, and that's a good thing. I had one of my guys that started one of our Bible colleges over in Australia, our ministry and Bible college, and I went over and we were holding meetings, drawing people to the school, and he pulled me aside and he says, I don't think I can do this. This is a huge task. I don't think I'm up to it. And he just expressed these concerns to me, and after he shared all of this, he looked at me, what do you think? And I said, I think that's wonderful. And he looked at me like, what's wrong with you? I just told you I don't think I can do it. I'm not able. And I said, that's wonderful as long as you don't stop there. And that makes you depend upon God, because God is going to call you to do something bigger than yourself. If you can accomplish your dreams on your own, then you do not know God's will for your life. It's going to stretch you. And one of the impediments, one of the things that Satan uses to limit God in your life is just this sense of laziness, the cares of this world, complacency to where you are just coasting and enjoying life, but you aren't stretching yourself beyond yourself. You need to be stretched. You need to be green and growing. The moment you become brittle and dry, you'll break.
Heeft deze uitzending je aangesproken? En verlang je naar meer? Het levensveranderende onderwijs van Andrew Wommack is ook beschikbaar via onze website. Je vindt hier veel naar het Nederlands vertaalde boeken, dvd's en meer. Er zijn ook veel Nederlands ondertitelde video's beschikbaar op ons YouTube-kanaal. Kijk op andrewwommack.nl.